Hello and welcome to Fish TV. It's been a little while. I think this is episode 11, something like that. We're coming up to Christmas, so we're feeling festive at 14 Fish.
Certainly are.
And it's very exciting this week. Again, we've got another guest on. Duncan, would you like to tell a bit about our guest?
Why, thank you, Philip. We have Dr. Sian Mew, who is, as some of you may have seen from an earlier episode, posed us a question which was very exciting. She's been a great friend to us. She is a portfolio GP. She predominantly works as a locum GP now. She's worked as a partner, as a salary doctor. The interview is really interesting, actually. A great take on it, I thought. Sometimes you feel as a partner you've got to tread very carefully as to regard to issues to do with locums. She dealt with that extremely, had an interesting take on it, and an interesting take on the theme that we've been doing of sort of trying to look for, in these difficult times, paths through to the future, I guess. And so it was an interesting talk. We hope you enjoy it. Oh, sorry, and I should say, well, I suppose it'll come in, we cover it in the interview, but just continuing the introduction of Sian, she's a portfolio GP, also set up with her husband and runs Locum Organiser.
Of course.
Which is a fantastic tool. Anyway, enjoy the interview. Hello. Here with me this week we have Dr. Sian Mew.
Hello.
For our avid fans, you'll probably remember Sian from episode, is it 2 or 3 or something?
3, I think.
So you're one of our avid fans because you know the number.
Yes.
When Sian posed a question, we had a themed sort of edition on locums, and Sian has very kindly come in today to talk to us. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
I'll start by introducing you there a bit more thoroughly. So Sian, you've worked as a GP locum for sort of how long now, Sian?
On and off. I've locum for 3 big amounts of time since I trained in 2003, 2004. So I've had 3 episodes of locuming. This has been my longest stint. So I've done it in between roles. I've been salaried, I've been a partner, and now I'm portfolio.
Yes.
Because I also do a bit of dermatology and obviously Locum Organiser work. So I kind of have 3 different roles, which I'm really enjoying, the variety.
Yes, and really, I remember my dad was a GP, and he always used to say to me, it's so important to have another interest in general practice. And I sort of thought, well, really, I love being a GP. I sort of always, you think, oh, I'm only ever going to be a full-time GP. But actually, it's so true, isn't it? I realised that when I became a GP trainer and then sort of different things, it keeps your sanity, but also keeps your enthusiasm, I think. So.
I've definitely found that. And in fact, since I've been doing the dermatology, it's really made me appreciate general practice more, which is slightly bizarre because I didn't expect that aspect of it. But now when I do my shifts as a locum, I have started to enjoy home visits again and enjoy the fact that I'm seeing such a huge variety of medicine. And then I love the dermatology for the fact that I know exactly what, I'm only seeing skin things, and it is that variety that's kept it alive for me. I'm happier now, excuse me, I'm happier now being a GP probably than I've ever been, actually, with that variety. Yeah.
Especially at the moment where everyone seems not as happy as they perhaps were in general practice at the moment.
Well, I think partly that's it really. It's quite protective of that negative side. Having something else, having another role that is very different to general practice, and also as a locum, I think you are quite protected against. That's probably why people are choosing it. You're quite protected against that negative side to a large extent. The increased managerial and admin tasks of being a partner. So I feel fairly, I'm very aware of people around me and what's going on, but I feel fairly immune to it at the moment.
Well, that's interesting. So we've sort of, you're the 3rd guest we've had on this series, and the first one was Dr. Nigel Watson, Chief Executive of West Exam Seas, followed by Richard Weaver, and both of them there was a sort of theme of the current climate and the difficulties. And both, it was a very positive discussion. But the perception is that actually, because things are very difficult out there, as you've just reflected, more people are choosing to become locums. And do you think is that something you as a locum is that tally with your experience?
Definitely. I mean, so I was a partner in my last sort of permanent role. When did I finish that? About 3 years ago. And for me, locuming then was a positive choice. And I think that's the difference, is that when I first trained, locuming, certainly amongst my peers, was seen as a way of finding a job, experiencing different practices. And all those things are still true. It fulfills that particular role. But in addition now, it's become, as like with myself, it's become a positive decision. It's become perhaps a career choice for people.
I remember when I started work as a GP, not that long ago, but we'll probably have lots of people write in shock about that. But as you say, it was similar to that. It was almost like having a year out before university.
Yes.
It was sort of to fill time,
Yes.
or just to find a job. Whereas it does feel that it's different now, especially with the portfolio sort of acceptance way of working.
Yes.
Do you think? I mean, what are the? Because I suppose the natural reaction is to think, if we have a huge move to lots of GPs locuming, do you think we're going to lose something in the profession? Or
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, if everybody locumed, then there would be nobody to employ the locums, and there's lots of positive aspects to locuming, but the downside is perhaps continuity of care for patients, and obviously we need partners to employ the locums, and obviously that there has to be. I think things have reached a point where there has to be surely some changes, and I'm positive that there will be in the next 5 or 10 years. We're a bit of an all-time low at the moment in terms of morale, but things will change, I'm sure, and people who are locuming as a bit of at the moment, a stopgap, who perhaps do want to look for a partnership in the future when things are a little bit better, then there will be this body of willing GPs who are currently locuming who will then want to take on the role, but it has to become more attractive in the meantime.
And do you think, and as part of that solution, so we talked about the perception of working as a locum being more positive.
Yeah.
Do you find, because probably that solution, as you say, part of that will be more locums perhaps going back to partnership or salaried model, but also I suspect that won't shift completely back.
No.
We probably need to find ways of being more positive about working with the locum role, trying to address that continuity issue.
Yes.
I worked as a locum for a year. Practices were always very welcoming to me, but there was a slight perception of being a second-class citizen. Do you think that's something that will change, or ways of working could be improved with the locum role sort of being more accepted?
Yeah, I think in my experience that's certainly as a locum, I feel that because you are really needed, you are appreciated.
And difficult to get as well. And
difficult to get hold of. So there is, the way I personally work is that I have a fairly small number of practices that I return to. So I personally have that way. That's the way I get around the continuity for me.
Yes. Oh, nice.
And the practices that I am with, then I feel more part of a team. I'm not the locum, I'm Sian. And that for me, that's the way I get around that. And I haven't felt that negative, that potentially negative aspect of being the locum. But I do think that there is a growing sort of feeling of them and us between perhaps partners and locums and salaried, because there's this, the partners are suffering and becoming more and more reliant on locums when they don't want to do that.
No.
And locums are a growing body of people, but there must be ways that we can work together, because we are not, as locums, we're not, I don't think the problem, we are part of the solution. We can help them, and things have to fairly fundamentally change within partnerships, and locums will, be that workforce
that solution.
Be part of that solution.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Thank you. And take a slight tangent, and you won't be surprised that we sometimes, as you've probably seen, talk about appraisals.
No,
but but it is linked in that, with this increased stresses and trying to find solutions for the future. It has been mentioned that appraisal should be, is that something we should get rid of, or revalidation? Which obviously we would feel is a shame. We're great appraisal and learning and medical education enthusiasts, but we have to recognise there is a workload implication in terms of appraisal and revalidation. And in fact, it's also recognised that for locums, and as we've talked about before on Fish TV, that there's certainly a different dynamic, if not more difficult, to get some of the evidence required for appraisal and revalidation. Do you think there are ways we can sort of help or address that? And what's been your experience, I suppose, of having especially useful, because you had revalidation, well, you've certainly had appraisal in both roles as the partner.
Yes, I have, and I would I would agree with you that there are certain aspects that are harder as a locum, doing the patient surveys and the colleague feedback is definitely harder.
Yes.
But certainly, even though you might have to put in a little bit more time and work and effort, I think as a locum it can be even more valuable, because you are, for some locums it can be fairly isolating. There are ways you can protect yourself against that, and usually the ways that you can protect yourself against that involve some form of CPD learning. So for me, for example, when I was a partner, there was a monthly meeting, or more frequent than that we would automatically then get a meeting involving a consultant coming in and talking. Well, that was obviously, now I have to create my own. Well, I'm part of a small learning group with other locums and various roles within my group, actually, which is nice. And we support each other, and without that I think I would be pretty lost. I really, really find that valuable. Getting patient feedback is just as, if not more valuable, really. I think as a locum you can miss out on general feedback. You don't necessarily get that constant feedback of letters from consultants saying whether what you've done is right or wrong, or what happened to the patient. You have to actively look to follow up your patients. And I mean, again, for me, doing appraisal, it's something I should do anyway, but it makes me do it.
Yes.
It makes me, when I go back to my practices, I check up on referrals I've made, and I perhaps wouldn't do that. I don't know without that.
Well, I suppose it's regard, but it doesn't matter whether you would or wouldn't, I suppose. But it's quite interesting to hear that it helps with your satisfaction, I think, is what you're saying.
Definitely. And I mean, I can't pretend that having to do all the things that we have to do for appraisal isn't. I mean, I've got my appraisal looming now, and it's on my mind, and I've got the usual sort of things going through my mind. Have I got enough time to complete, all the complete it in time? But I know that each time I've then done it and gone through the process, that it's been valuable. I've personally found it valuable to sit down for a couple of hours with my appraiser and talk about, especially in my role having changed in the last couple of years.
Yes,
he's helped with that, and it's been for me a positive experience. So yes, you have to maybe put in a bit more work, a bit more thought maybe than work.
Yeah.
It perhaps it's not quite so easy to find those those difficult patient cases, follow them up, make sure you go back to practice, make sure you get all the data back. But probably you gain more from it, from doing it.
Yes, and I think that was reflected in my experience. When I worked as a locum, having been a partner for 5 years, I certainly missed that, and I thought, gosh, I'm not getting the sort of continuity like that. But as you say, if you those patients you do follow up, phone the practice or phone patients after asking if that's okay. They seem to love that, but also it helps your satisfaction, doesn't it?
And it definitely. Yeah.
So that's positive. Yeah. Oh, thank you. And the other thing, when I worked as a locum, having been a partner, I was suddenly sort of petrified. I mean, how because it's quite different, isn't it? You having not worked as one before.
Yes.
You've suddenly got pension forms. You've suddenly got, how do I even get work? What if I can't get work? And you touched on the fact that you work for Locum Organiser, which, well, you don't work. You helped form with a person you know, I believe.
Yes. Know quite well.
Yeah, that's your husband.
Yes, I know him fairly well.
Really, we touched on that of what it does, but do you want to elaborate on that? Because actually that can be really useful, both starting as locum, also for practices, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea was born back in 2009 when I was locuming I was in between salaried and partnership at that time, and I locumed for about a year, and during that year I was the disorganised locum that Locum Organiser was sort of modelled on, because Chris, my husband, is a web developer and a programmer. So he would see me filling out by hand the pension forms and cursing and having a folder full of paperwork and getting maybe even missing months of paying my pension because I was that disorganised. And he was
it's easily done though, isn't it? You say it as if it sort of was you, but I suspect you are. Most doctors have to be fairly organised, but actually there's suddenly this additional level of...
There is, and I remember speaking to a trainee, quite recently, who said that when they were finishing off their training and going into locuming, it was like stepping off the end of a cliff, because it's all unknown and it's scary, and it can be, and that's where we try to, that the idea was that Locum Organiser, web-based toolkit, basically, to help with two aspects of it really, to help with the admin side of being locum, so all those pension forms, invoicing, scheduling, expenses tracker, keeping an eye on your finances. It does all of that. It's all automated. So the only thing you have to do is put in your bookings and into a diary, and from that it drives the rest of the site. So you literally have to press a button and you get an automated invoice and pension form that you can then email to a practice. So it makes that side of things a whole lot easier. You don't have to worry about making sure the sums are right. They are right because it's all automated and designed that way.
Well, we've had feedback from GPs who use our site and use yours, very positive. But I suspect that's because, from what you've said, like all the best solutions, they're sort of built to solve your own problem.
Yes.
Because you were finding it a struggle, your husband noticed, and together you've sort of evolved this product.
It was just like the right time, the right place, and we were in a position at the time where you didn't have children. We were in a position that Chris could develop it, and we didn't have those financial pulls on us at the time. So I then became a partner for a short period of time, for a few years, and Chris developed the site, and then we went live in 2010, 2011, and it's all grown from there. And really, it's evolved based on feedback. So although
brilliant.
It was just the two of us initially setting it up, what it's become now is very much based on what our users have asked for and need, and we're constantly developing. The other aspect of the site is the gaining work, is the putting practices in touch with locums, and we're just a point of contact. So practices can see the locums. If the locum wishes to be seen, that function can be turned on or off, and then can contact the locum, and from therefore they take things on themselves between the two of them.
Gosh, well, hugely valuable at the moment when, as we've said, the locums are so needed and practices are struggling to get locums. So that's good to know, I think. And do you enjoy it? It sounds like you do.
I really do. I mean, I'm kind of my role, obviously Chris is the developer, and I can't take any credit for really the innards of the site and how they work, because that's all Chris. My role really now is more sort of the social media and trying to get the message out there to people. And also I've written the startup guide for new locums, which again was, we were constantly having locums, or rather trainees who were about to locum saying things to us like, well, how do I do this, how do I do that? And we were telling them, but we thought we need to get the message out there on the site. So we have this getting started guide that's not actually inside, you don't have to sign up for it. It's just available to anybody.
Oh, brilliant.
So,
we'll post a link to that, and useful for anyone becoming a locum, whether they're trainee, whatever stage of their career.
It is really. I mean, it's full of links to how, links to, say, for example, how do you make sure that you're on the national performers list, and there's a link to check that you're on there, and it's full of links and full of everything that we could possibly think of that you'd need as a new locum, somebody starting out at any point in their career.
I'm glad we've mentioned that then, actually, because that sounds fantastic. So, well, thank you very much, Sian. Thank you for coming along. And if we always say how people can post questions, but if they post any questions locum related, would it be okay if we?
Of course.
Thank you.
More than happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sian. That was fantastic, very interesting. And if you have any questions you'd like us to answer on 50GB, or topics you'd like covered, please do send them to us. You can do that via our website or comment on the video.
Hang on a minute. Aren't I supposed to say, Phil, how can people...
No, it's episode 11, I think.
You think people have realised I should know that by now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, carry
exactly.
on.
You're very good at it, though. You should be an actor.
Thank you.
And while you're at it, make sure you follow us on social media. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on Instagram, which is surprisingly good.
How can you say that and I'm not allowed to say about the question thing? I don't think that's very fair. But anyway.
I'm still constantly surprised at how good our Instagram channel is.
Okay, yes.
Surprise hasn't faded.
No.
For a sort of IT company, I think it's quite good.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Great.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next
Sian.
time. Yeah, thanks, Sian, and bye-bye. Okay.
Hello. Just joking, that's your bit.
Yeah. Bounce.
I've fallen for this before, but I'm going to fall it again.
Mine's very high, by the way. Shall I?
Oh, yes. What am I supposed to be doing?
Those you're missing. Great bounce. I'd do another button up. What were we even saying?
Love is gone, I wish you well, and I will leave you now alone.